There was a counselor that worked here, and he called me one day and said, listen, I work at Pavillon. They're looking for a spiritual director. Will you be willing to come down and get an interview? Came down and interviewed, was hired. On my first day, the clinical director at the time was a man named Steve Millett, and he said, I want you to build a spiritual wellness department. Before that, the yoga was kind of under nursing. That was kind of a little bit of the wellness. That's about all there was. And the spiritual, they had a lady that was kind of part-time. That was under psychology. So there wasn't anything together. We started looking at how to build the wellness program, how to have a wellness workout place, which we built over the years. And then from the spiritual side, the idea was that I wanted it integrated in every part of Pavillon. So I did some workshops for the staff talking about what spirituality was. That was kind of a first step. One of the second steps was building a labyrinth on the property, and then actually teaching the staff what it meant to walk a labyrinth and try and support even the staff going down and using the labyrinth at times. We incorporated myself doing some lectures on spirituality. A couple of years went by, and I said, I think I'm doing a good job. What is the rest of the world doing? So I started reaching out to other treatment programs across the country, ended up connecting with the spiritual director at Caron, by the name of Jack Abel, and him and I got talking, and we built a program, an organization called Spiritual Counseling Addiction Professionals, and we reached out to other treatment programs across the country. And at one point there was 38 members of that organization. Over the course of time, corporations sort of buying out some things, they closed those departments up until it dwindled down to there was only Jack and I, and so we ended up closing up that organization, which is kind of a sad thing if you think about recovery and the importance of spirituality and recovery. But Pavillon has held true a spiritual wellness ideology, especially the spiritual part. I had long conversations with our psychiatrist at the time, and him and I talked about the difference between psychological aspects of a person's personality and what they're dealing with, and where the line was spiritually. And he was very open to us working together, and also Dr. Denise Kagan from the psychology department in talking and developing the idea that it's not always psychiatric, it's not always psychology based, it's sometimes a spiritual based, and being able to incorporate that. Brian Kuhn also brought me in as part of the professional assessment team, started sitting in on all the treatment teams and having a voice in there, which hadn't been done before. And then we had this beautiful lady come on board, first of all as a counselor, and then the more that her and I got to know each other and talked, I realized that she had a very strong spiritual background and heart. So we started working together and developing and designing how she could work as part of the spiritual program too. And that's Jocelyn, this beautiful lady sitting next to me.
Thank you very much. I had always felt a tug or a pull from the time, I guess I was very young and didn't really know what that tug or pull was, and moved from working in the criminal justice system to becoming a therapist, and always trying to figure out a way to integrate spirituality into what I did, to services I provided. And I could not wait to come here to work, because the biggest draw that I had to come here was this beautiful property and Wolf. I read about his role here at Pavillon, and I said, this is fantastic. I've worked at a number of treatment facilities, and this is a first, to actually be able to come to a place that embraces individuals and groups learning more about their internal spirituality, thinking about how some people feel that they've been harmed by organized religion, and not really understanding their own internal personal power and their own internal strength, and not being able to develop that. And here is a place where people can do that. And I found that to be extremely enticing and encouraging in the field of both mental health and addictions. And so I immediately ran up to Wolf my first week after being hired, and I said, I want to talk. And it started from there. I did not hold back, and he seemed not at least bit shocked that this person he didn't know ran up in his face and just started immediately talking like a little kid. And I wanted to know everything and do everything and learn everything, and over time, getting to know each other, it kind of mutated into an opening and him allowing me to do what I knew how to do, that I learned culturally, and of course things that I read about and experienced in my past, and integrated that into clinical practice with patients here, because this is an environment for recovery, not just substance addiction recovery, but emotional recovery, spiritual recovery. When people leave here, they're not going to remember all of the big words and may not remember everything that we've said, but when they have that spiritual experience here, that is something they remember after leaving treatment.
I still have people from almost 16 years ago that reach out and email me or contact me in regards to their experience that they've had at Pavillon from a spiritual standpoint that has held their recovery in place for them. I want to come back to one thing that I think is really an important point. Since I've been here, I've been through 3 CEOs, and everyone has been 100% supportive of having a deep spiritual program here at Pavillon. And I think that's an important piece to realize, that the CEOs, the board, everybody is in support of that piece of the puzzle, from the administration down, has been awesome. And I think that's important. And I've visited a lot of treatment programs over the last 16 years of traveling and talking and everything. And a lot of programs that do even have a spiritual program, they kind of hold that piece and they kind of pull their clients or patients into what that is. The difference that we have at Pavillon here is that we assess a person where they're at when they arrive, as far as their spiritual belief system. And from that point, what we do is support what it is that they have, or we help them find a pathway. It becomes very individualized, because people always say, what's the difference between religion and spirituality? And to me, a religion is a belief system. Spirituality is, how do you work that? And so allowing each person to find their own pathway from a belief system, and then teaching them, how do you work that on a daily basis? And I think that is a big part of what makes Pavillon unique and different, is the fact that each person is an individual within their spirituality too, not just within their person. And let them find their own path and guide them along the path, not try to show them. If you try to push somebody towards something, they reject it. If you try to pull somebody towards something, they reject it. If you just kindly put your arm around them and show them some unconditional love and talk to them about where they're at, eventually they're walking down a path with you and they feel like they're empowered.